Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today in this Tier 10 standard battle on the Atlantic map, we're going to be taking a look at the new Dutch Tier 10 destroyer, HN LMS Tromp, being sold for us today by Quackenmaster, the artist formerly known as Flambas. Yes, he changes his name about once a month, and he trusts his Twitch audience to pick that name for him. Brave man. So, let's take a quick look at this new destroyer. 150mm guns, 6 of them and 3 turrets, reasonably fast reload. Torpedoes seem okay. Damage is a little on the low side, but a quick reload, a fast speed, and a good range. It also gets depth charges and the Dutch party piece, high explosive airstrikes. Damage control is standard. The speed boost is pretty good, 25% bonus speed, much more than the standard 8%. And it also comes with the defensive fire consumable. That's an interesting combination. So let's just pull this together and see what we've got. Tier 10 Dutch destroyer, armed with 150mm guns. It doesn't get a smoke screen. It gets the defensive fire consumable. It's armed with torpedoes, but it only has 1 triple launcher on each side. This is a cruiser, isn't it? It's a light cruiser. Damn the description. This is a light cruiser, it's not a destroyer. I mean, it is a destroyer in World of Warships, in as much as it doesn't have a citadel that can be detonated. But in all other respects, it's a light cruiser. 6-inch guns, no smoke, light torpedo armament, defensive AA consumable. It's a light cruiser. And the Tromp actually was a light cruiser, not a destroyer, and yet it's in World of Warships as a destroyer. Actually, Jingles, there are other destroyers in the game that have this caliber of main battery gun armament. Yes, that's true, I'll give you that. We're mostly looking at the Germans here, but guess what? They're light cruisers too. Regardless of the in-game description, they're light cruisers, just like this thing. So, it's basically a light cruiser that can't be citadeled, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, it doesn't have the firepower of other Tier 10 light cruisers like the Worcester or the Minotaur, for example, to name a famous few. But it can't be citadeled, unlike the Worcester or the Minotaur. I suppose given the fact that the Tromp only has... I mean, it's big by destroyer standards, but it's small even by light cruiser standards. I mean, I can see why they made it a destroyer. Plus the fact that it does only have 6 150mm guns. But then again, you know, look at the Forrest Sherman, it's only got 2 127mm guns, but nobody ever accused that thing of being low on firepower. If they wanted to make this thing a cruiser, they could have done it. They would have had to go all unhistorical about the rate of fire on the guns, of course, but since when has that ever been a problem for wargaming? Thing is, even as a destroyer, the torpedo armament is on the light side. I mean, there are destroyers in the game that don't have torpedoes. It's the Dutch Tier 9, whose name I can't remember. Yeah, that one. The one whose name I can't remember. It'll pop into my head 3 minutes from now and I'll suddenly blurt it out. So, yeah, I mean, you look at light cruisers like the Minotaur. It has a much, much heavier torpedo armament than this, and it's not a destroyer. But, you know, the line between a destroyer and a light cruiser is often blurred in reality as much as it is in World of Warships. Look at the Kuma, for example. The Japanese Tier 4 light cruiser. Is it actually a light cruiser? Or is it a destroyer leader? What is a destroyer leader anyway? Isn't that a fancy way of saying a light cruiser designed to lead a destroyer squadron? Well, yeah. Hence, the line is often blurred. And honestly, it doesn't really matter what you classify this thing as. The only question you really should be asking is it any fun to play? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can't say for sure, I don't have one, so I've never actually played it, but it seems pretty good. Despite the obvious limitations, only 6 guns for example, but a reasonable 4.3 second reload and a good firing range by destroyer standards. Torpedoes. Does only have 1 triple launcher on each side, and they don't do a huge amount of damage, but they only have a 70-second reload, and they have a decent 12km range and a reasonable 64 knot speed. Concealment. It's not terrible. Base surface detectability range of 7.3 kilometers. Quackenmaster's managed to get that down to about 5.9. Not bad. He's not going to be out spotting any Shimikazes, but it does have reasonable stealth. Speed, actually pretty terrible. Top speed of 33.5 knots, which is, it's kind of slow even by cruiser standards, but 25% engine boost. So, I mean, yeah, there's nothing really bad about this ship at all. Well, except for the top speed. But in areas where there is something bad about this ship, like the top speed, it has something to compensate for that. In this case, a really, really good engine boost. Of course, there's nothing outstandingly good about the ship either, but just being pretty good in all departments is actually a good thing. I mean, look at the Nicholas at tier 5. It's not really outstanding in any one respect, but that doesn't make it a bad ship. In fact, it's probably my favourite tier 5 destroyer, because it's just reasonably good at everything. I mean, you can have ships that are reasonably or even pretty good in most departments, but one where they have a glaring weakness, like that tier 9 Dutch destroyer whose name I still can't remember, that doesn't have torpedoes. And that can often be its downfall, because generally speaking, if there's an angry smokescreen spitting shells out at you, most battleship players aren't going to want to go anywhere near that smokescreen because they're afraid of torpedoes. But if they know the Dutch tier 9 destroyer, whose name I still can't remember, is in that smokescreen, they know it doesn't have torpedoes, so they've got nothing to be afraid of, so they just charge the smokescreen. Friesland, that was it. I knew I'd remember the name eventually. Hang on, Jingles, isn't that in the European tech tree? Yeah, well, it was originally a Dutch ship, and then they brought out the pan-European tech tree, so they put it there, but then they cloned it and called it the Groningen, and they left that as a Dutch one as well. So it's basically in the game twice, once as the Friesland and once as the Groningen. That's probably why I couldn't remember the name, because it's basically two ships with two different names, but they're effectively the same ship. Anyway, enough waffling and old man rambling. Let's actually pay attention to what's going on in the battle, because it might not look like it, but something critical is occurring over here on the eastern flank. And I'm not talking about Quackenmaster's first kill. That Mecklenburg just got obliterated by Quackenmaster, the Stalingrad that he's with, who's just popped his radar, and they're being supported by a rune as well. And that is it. And they're fighting off, first it looked like only 2 or 3 enemy ships, but there's actually more like 7. Now, in time-honoured fashion, you'd think that would mean, given that there's only 3 of them over here fighting off more than half of the enemy team, that his 9 other teammates would be having a much easier time elsewhere on the map, because they would horribly outnumber the enemy team over on, for example, the western flank. Oh, if only that was the case. But it never is it? Quackenmaster's team have suffered 3 casualties, and they've pretty much all occurred over on the other end of the map, where his team had the numerical advantage. Because of course they are. So there's not going to be any relief over here on the eastern end of the map for Quackenmaster, that rune, or the Stalingrad anytime soon. Ooh, more juicy torpedo hits. Remember, a very fast 70-second reload on these torpedoes. And another kill. Do you see what's going on here? And I'm not talking about his team continuing to hemorrhage ships elsewhere on the map. They're now 5 ships down. I'm talking about how the enemy team are not focusing their fire over here. They're shooting at pretty much everybody. They're shooting at the Stalingrad. They're shooting at Quackenmaster in the Tromp. They're shooting at the rune. None of them are focusing their fire. And as a direct result of that, they're not actually sinking anybody, at least not over here on this end of the map. On the other hand, Quackenmaster, the rune, and the Stalingrad are focusing their fire. And as a result, they're knocking enemy ships down like 9 pins. Oh, hello. I was wondering when we were going to see some of the enemy destroyers. There's the Halland. That's a real bad time to get spotted. 2 cruisers and another destroyer. And there's some flanking fire coming in from somebody. Although that looks more like secondaries. Oh, and there's a fire. And Halland doesn't get a smoke screen, does it? I bet he wishes he had one now. Is this going to be kill number 3? It is. There we go. 104,000 damage. You know, not bad for a ship with only 1 triple torpedo launcher on each side and 6 150mm guns. I mean, he's got that Dutch airstrike as well, but still. pretty respectable. Then again, this is Flambass, isn't it? I mean, he first appeared on my radar as the gearing player in Kings of the Sea, I think for Omni, was it? Whoever it was who won the first Kings of the Sea and kept winning it. I mean, there aren't many destroyer players in World of Warships with the amount of experience that he has in playing destroyers, particularly at tier 10. It is kind of his natural element. There goes that engine boost again. They're actually attacking now. I mean, they were outnumbered at least 2 to 1 over on this flank. And all 3 of them are still alive, although just barely in the case of the Stalingrad and the Rune. But alive is alive. All of their guns still work. And now they're going on the offensive, which is just as well. Somebody on the team has to, because the team have basically been crushed everywhere else and have fallen back to attempt to defend the base. Now, this is a brave move. He's going after the Salem. Salem, of course, has radar, although it is kind of the Walmart version of the same radar that the Des Moines gets, which is the Salem's sister ship. The Salem being the premium version of the Des Moines, if you like. The radar, I think, only has an 8.5 kilometer range. It's not great. Then again, it's not like he's worried about getting caught in a smoke screen or anything, is it? He doesn't have one. And the Salem, I think, is the only enemy ship left alive up here, and it's in full retreat. It's not even shooting back. Then again, you know, it only has the one turret at the rear to shoot back with. And probably more concerned with getting into cover behind that island. Oh, and he nearly made it. And then the Stalingrad bitch slapped it into the middle of next week. Right, that's it. They've won this flank. 3 ships against, oh, I don't know, a lot. And they handled it. Well, it wasn't easy, but they handled it with relative ease. And they're now finally, although only just, ahead on kills. They're well ahead on points, though. And the reason for that is because different types of ship are worth different amounts of points. And Quackenmaster's team have been sinking mostly battleships, which is good because it means they're further ahead on points. The enemy team have been sinking mostly destroyers, which is good because destroyers aren't worth as many points, but it's also really, really bad because the enemy team still have 3 destroyers, which is really bad news for the battleships on Quackenmaster's team. And Quackenmaster is the only destroyer left alive on his team. So, yeah, RNGesus giveth and RNGesus taketh away. So, yeah, last destroyer left alive on his team. A lot of responsibility, but it's fine. He's got broad shoulders. Still has a reasonable amount of health to play with. Although, unlike other destroyers at tier 10 that don't come with smoke screens, doesn't get a repair party consumable, so this is all the health he's ever going to have. And while the team are up on kills and points, and I spoke too soon. I was about to say, a lot of the battleships surviving on his team do not have a huge amount of health left. The enemy team have just equalised the kills and pretty much equalised the points by nailing the Yamato. Enemy Iowa is looking very, very vulnerable though. There's a fire, it's nice. It's continuing to burn, which suggests that he doesn't actually have his damage control ready to go. I know I always say you never just extinguish one fire with the damage control, but you do when you're on that kind of low health. Yep, there goes the Iowa. Nice. Team back ahead again. Now he's doing a bit of open water gunboating here, trying to get another fire set on the Montana. And open water gunboating is always dangerous in a destroyer because the second the destroyer gets spotted, it tends to get shot at, which is of course what's going on. Principally from the Riga over there, who is a very dangerous opponent. But what else is he going to do? I mean, they need to get some kills. But the trick when you're open water gunboating in a destroyer is knowing when to stop. And right now he's getting shot at by multiple targets and he doesn't have a smoke screen. So, yeah. Let's stop shooting. Doesn't mean he has to stop attacking, of course. He still has the airstrike and you can launch that without giving your position away. But he does need to go undetected here, because he's starting to attract an awful lot of attention. And he's managed to go undetected. And if this had been anybody else, I would have said, oh, he didn't see the island coming. That could have been very, very dangerous, getting pinned up against an island and spotted in open water. But it's not anybody else, it's Flambass. And he did go undetected right before he ran into the island. And running into the island like that allowed him to radically adjust his speed. So anybody aiming at where they thought he was going to be, missed, because he was able to reverse almost instantly after running aground. Now, I don't know for sure, because I never saw this happening live on his Twitch stream, if that was his plan. But I wouldn't be surprised if it had been, because I've seen him do stranger things, and usually for good reasons. Of course, it could just be that he screwed up and ran into the island. Because he's human, and his arse points downwards, just like the rest of us. Anyway, he's managed to get a head of steam going again, back up to full speed, although he has now run out of engine boosts. So this is going to be a problem. Remember, the top speed of this thing without that 25% engine boost is only 33.5 knots. And he is still the only destroyer left on his team with a whole bunch of extremely low health battleships, and there are still 3 destroyers on the enemy team. Although, you see, both teams started off with 4 destroyers. The enemy team had a Kiev, a Halland, a Kitakazi, and a Lightning. And I don't know which of their 4 destroyers has been sunk. I know they've got 3 left, but okay, that was bad news, although I suppose it was fairly inevitable that the Burgoyne was about to die. But I think he may be the stealthiest ship left alive in this battle, because of the 4 enemy destroyers that they started with, the Kitakazi, the Halland, the Kiev, and the Lightning, none of them have particularly great stealth. And his stealth isn't bad. I mean, like I said, he's not going to be out spotting any Shimikazes anytime soon, but he does have sub 6 kilometer stealth. Oh, it was the Halland that they killed. Yeah, well, of course it was. He sank him. We actually watched it happen. So the enemy still have the Lightning, the Kiev, which has terrible stealth, the Kitakazi, which doesn't have great stealth. I don't know what the Lightning stealth is. Actually, I do think the Lightning might be able to outspot him. And he was last spotted over in that direction. So he is going to need to be careful. The Lightning may be able to see him before he can see the Lightning. And they've just lost the Stalingrad. So the team no longer have any radar. The enemy team do, of course. They still have the Riga, who's on the other side of the island over there. Which is, of course, why he's keeping a healthy distance. Lightning's probably also in that direction too. Yep, there's the Riga. Can't remember the Riga's radar range off the top of my head, but it is Russian, so it's probably very, very long. Gets a couple of shots out. Have to slip into cover behind the island. We're going to get some impacts, yes, but no fires. Torpedoes on the Montana. Gets a couple of shots out against the Montana as well. He can actually... Oh, hang on, somebody spotted him. Oh, that's bad. Oh, there's the high caliber award. 185,000 damage. And there's the Kitakazi. That's a very, very brave move for a destroyer on less than 1,000 health. Although the Kitakazi was probably thinking, I am the Kitakazi, the most overpowered tier 9 destroyer in the game. Fear my firepower, I can take out a Tromp. Yeah, guess what, sunshine? No, you can't. There goes the Riga's radar. So, I mean, nobody's really in a position to shoot at him from here. He's not hard spotted by anybody, but he is radared. And that lets him know that the Riga is within 12 kilometers. So he just has to wait the radar out, because it's Russian radar, it's got long range, but it doesn't last very long. And sure enough, there's the Riga. So he knows the Riga's radar is on cooldown. Now, of course, he doesn't have a smoke screen, so he's not worried about getting radared while in smoke. But he now knows he has the option, should he wish to exercise it, of approaching to no more than 5.9 kilometers away from the Riga, which is the detection range, without getting surprised by any unexpected radar in order to get a torpedo attack off. Although it looks like he's more concerned about finishing off and sinking that Montana, but he is paying attention to where the Riga is. Keeping that information in his back pocket. Hello? That's an unusual torpedo spread. Ah, there's a very angry looking smoke screen over there. I believe we now know where the Lightning is. The fact that the Lightning is smoking up is actually good news. I mean, getting shot at by the Lightning is not good news, but he is undetected, and the Lightning, of course, can't spot anything from within a smoke screen. So if he wants to pop out and do something brave and foolish, assuming the Lightning is still in that smoke screen, now would be the time. Then again, you only have 2,000 health left, so maybe brave and foolish isn't the best thing to be doing right now. Plus, the team are ahead on points. There's less than a minute left. You really don't need to win any harder than you already are, although he hasn't managed to get a fire set, which is continuing to burn on the Montana. Is the Montana going to go down? Ah, they've killed the Rune. Ah, he's got the Montana. Battleship's worth more points than a cruiser. They're ahead again. Oh, he's been hydroed. That must be the Lightning. And British destroyers have a very short range hydro, so he's within 3.5 kilometres. He's proximity detected. The Lightning is right on the other side of the island. Hug the island, Flambass. 4 seconds, wait it out. And they win on points. Yeah, that was a bit of a nail biter. The Rune going down at the last second, putting the enemy team ahead, but then the Fire finishing off the Montana, and then getting proxy spotted by the Lightning. I think his butthole was doing the old 5 pence, 50 pence, 5 pence, 50 pence thing at the end there. But that's it. You know, if you're winning, take the win. You don't need to win any harder than you already are. And it's nice to see the three of them, Quackenmaster, the Rune and the Stalingrad. Even though the Rune didn't get any kills, he definitely earned his position in the top 3 by experience earned on that team. So that was good to see as well. And I hope you enjoyed today's video in the brand new all-singing, all-dancing, cloggy Tier 10 light cruiser, even if they call it a destroyer, the HNLMS Tromp. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.